Dan Hurley is back in college basketball. The UConn Huskies head coach turned down 6 years and $70 million guaranteed from the Los Angeles Lakers to come back to Storrs, Connecticut and coach the UConn Huskies and try to win a third straight national championship. And I think it goes without saying, and everybody listening to this will probably agree with me, that this is a great thing for UConn and a great thing for college basketball. The sport needs someone to be the face. The sports needs someone to be a public persona, right? To be the spectacle. Hurley can be that. He's a WWE fan. He thrives as the heel. He understands the element of good versus evil when it comes to the sport, the sporting landscape, and how that kind of impacts the way that people consume the product of the game, right? And I think he gets it, and I think he understands that. And I am glad that he is back because it is great for UConn. But this wasn't one of the things that frustrated me about this entire process, right? This entire decision-making process and the way that it was covered was how it was the NBA versus college, right? And what this means for the NBA and what this means for college and what this one man's decision about his future says about the sport as a whole and the NBA as a whole. And look, I don't think that this was ever something that was college basketball needs to be saved, right? Like, how often do we hear college basketball is dead, college basketball is dying, college basketball is on its deathbed, this, that, and the third about the sport, right? I don't think that there was ever truth in the narrative that this was a college basketball needs to be saved storyline, right? Like, I get it. The NIL exists. The transfer portal exists. All of this stuff has changed the way that the sport operates on a fundamental level, and it has driven out some of the biggest names in the sport. Coach K, Roy Williams, Jim Boeheim, Jay Wright. There's a lot of guys that are just kind of saying, I don't want to do this right now. A lot of the biggest names in college basketball are saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And I kind of get how people jump on the bandwagon, but uh, I I don't think that this was ever as much about the NBA versus college and what is better for college coaches and what is better for human beings that operate as coaches in the sport of basketball, as much as this was about one man's decision, right? Like, as much as this was about the fit of one specific human being and in his family in one job versus another job. Like, look, Dan Hurley is a guy that was born and raised in Jersey City, right? He was bred on Big East basketball. He played for Seton Hall. He coached at a high school in New Jersey. He coached at colleges in New York and New Jersey and Rhode Island and Connecticut. His family is here. His wife's family is here. He is as much a fabric of uh, basketball in the tri-state area as anybody that you're ever going to meet. And I think when you combine all of that with the fact that he has a chance to do something that has never been done in college basketball in the modern era and has not happened since Bill Walton was playing in college more than 50 years ago. I think that all of that stuff combined with the fact that he had the opportunity to somewhat follow in his father's footsteps as a guy that is known as much for his basketball coaching ability as for his ability to kind of develop young men for the next step in their life. And you put all of that together, and I think that was just a better fit for this one specific human being and his family than it was to move 3,000 miles away to go chase an NBA dream in an organization that has one star that is older than me who wants nothing more than to just play with his son for a season or two before he retires, and another star whose body is more or less made out of tissue paper and can never stay healthy, right? Like, I think that you can make an argument based off some of the conversations I've had with NBA people that the UConn job is right now a better job than what the Lakers job is. And, I understand that there's going to be more work involved, but, I said this yesterday on our show. I think that the UConn situation right now is very different than what a lot of other coaches are dealing with in the portal era. And I don't think that it's not even thinking, it is point blank period, right? Right now, when UConn is dealing with stuff in the portal, it is not losing 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that they didn't want to lose to the transfer portal, right? Their issue is replacing pros that are going off and doing bigger and better things in the NBA themselves, right? They had to replace 3 pros after winning the 23 title. They're going to have to replace 4 pros after winning the 24 title, right? And the difficult thing for the UConn staff right now when it comes to the portal is who to say no to. It's not going out and having to rebuild your roster. It's not figuring out how are we going to be able to get enough money in NIL to be able to afford to pay the guys that we want to come back and be able to get out and actually get players that can impact college basketball, right? They are getting guys on a discount because the players that are in the portal understand the value of going to UConn. They understand what it means for their long-term development, and they understand it will help get them set up to be able to make 7 or 8 figures in the NBA at some point, right? That is why UConn's able to get some of the guys that they're getting. That is why top 40, top 50, top 75 recruits that didn't really play all that much towards the end of the season did not consider entering the portal and transferring, right? People understand the development that it takes within this program to get to the point that they want to be, and they understand the value in it. And I think that makes his life much, much easier, right? And I also think that he's kind of wired for this, right? Like he wants to be in the gym practice. Like he's not worried about 3-hour practice. He probably, if he could practice 8 hours a day, I feel like Dan Hurley might be the kind of guy that would want to practice for 8 hours a day, right? Um, you got to watch a ton of film. Well, him, Luke, Kamani, Tom Moore, like those guys watch a ton of film. Like they're basketball junkies. They're basketball lifers. I think that is what they want to be doing, right? Oh, you got to go on the road on a Tuesday morning to go to NBA PA Top 100 camp, right? I think that that's stuff that this staff likes doing and that Dan likes doing. So I think that he is wired for some of the stuff, the level of work that it takes in college basketball. I think that is what he lives for. And to me, it makes so much sense to come back and have a chance to kind of put your stamp and put your legacy on the sport. And that's what I keep coming back to with this, right? And I said this on uh on Friday night, and maybe it was Saturday morning, that as much as going to the NBA and trying to prove yourself at the highest level as a coach in the sport of college basketball, the way to be able to create a legacy, the way to be able to get yourself in a position where things are named after you, where awards are named after you, where you become synonymous with college basketball, the way that John Wooden and Coach K and guys like that are. I just I don't think that it is very likely if Dan Hurley ever takes one of these NBA jobs that may or may not open, right? I think it is incredibly unlikely that he gets to that level as an NBA coach, right? It just you had to how many guys like that are there, right? There's only a handful of them at the NBA level. And in college, he has already taken the most difficult steps to get to that point. He's won the first couple of titles. He has now gotten himself into a situation where he can more or less get whoever they want as a recruit to bring into the program. They can recruit good human beings. They can recruit players that they believe are better fits for the system that they want to run and the program that they want to run. And I think that he set himself up to be able to make a run at winning a third, maybe a fourth, not consecutively, but a third, a fourth, maybe a fifth national title here in the next 15 years, right? Like that's not something that is impossible, especially if he continues at the rate that he has been going on. So I think that this is the chance for him to kind of put his legacy on the sport that he loves and do it in a place that is just a better fit for him. And the idea that this was anything more than that human being making this decision on what he wants to do, as opposed to uh, an overarching statement on the state of college basketball versus the state of NBA basketball, is just completely ridiculous, right? It's one human being making a decision. Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners, the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay booster too from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show. Now, I do think that this is a fantastic thing for the sport of college basketball, right? The single biggest storyline that you're going to find in college sports next season is whether or not UConn has a chance to actually be able to three-peat, right? I think that UConn is immediately a national draw on television, a national draw whenever they are playing a big non-conference game, a national draw whenever they are playing one of these biggest one of their biggest rivals in the Big East. Like, they are a top 3 team in America that is going to stay a top 3 team in America with their coach coming back and without losing a whole bunch of guys to the portal. And they are going to continue with the developmental pipeline that has been developed in stores already. I think all of this is really, really damn good for a sport that needs storylines that cut through the noise, that need characters that cut through the noise, that need stars that cut through the noise, that need people that are known beyond just the sport of college basketball and the junkies like us that live and breathe this ridiculous, ridiculous sport. And I think outside of March, Dan Hurley might be the guy that has the biggest profile of anybody in college basketball at this point, right? He just held the entire nation of of sports fans in the United States on edge. It was the only thing during the NBA finals, right? It was the only thing that could get people to stop fucking talking about Caitlin Clark for 2 minutes. It was a college basketball coach in June that finally got us to stop living and breathing and dying with every single thing that happened outside of Caitlin Clark. And by the way, I don't think that I've ever seen someone like Caitlin Clark that has become as polarizing of an athlete as she is without actually doing anything that deserves to be polarizing. She's just good at basketball, and everybody is taking out the narratives that they want to argue about and using Caitlin Clark as the justification to have those arguments. I sucks for her, man. I feel bad for her in that role, but it's nice that that is something that is not the headline for every single sports website and sports show and sports talking point. I'm glad that, that is over with. And I do believe that Dan Hurley is a guy that will enjoy that role as the centerpiece of the sport and the guy that gets the most attention. I've said it before. I'm a firm believer that much of what he does and the way that he carries himself publicly right now is calculated. Like he's not dumb. He's not out of control. He's not this complete loose cannon that is so intense and so competitive and so passionate that he loses all the ability to function as a human being once he gets in between those lines, right? Like he is all of those things. He's tough, he's fiery, he wants to win more than anything else, right? But um I don't think that the narrative has I think that the view of him publicly has surpassed what he is when it comes to all of those different things, right? Yes, his practices are going to be demanding. Yes, he's going to make you work as hard as you've ever worked in your life if you are part of that program. He's never going to settle for anything less than the absolute best when it comes to the players on this roster, when it comes to the coaches uh, preparing scouting reports, when it comes to the GAs that are setting up practice, when it comes to the guys that are running the clocks in practice, right? Like everything, he is demanding at a level that is demanding and detail oriented, and as any coach that I've seen when I've gone to practices, right? And I think that he understands how that works in college, and then the public stuff is like I think with the refs, the stuff with the fans, the back and forth that he has with the fans, the way that he interacts with UConn fans, the pumping up the crowd, all that kind of stuff. Like I think he more than anything else, he understands how well that plays to this UConn fan base, right? And how well all of that stuff works as he kind of makes himself the heel nationally and the villain nationally, right? Like the saying that they have is you hear it from them all the time is like you're either with us or you're against us. And then they're going to try to fight anybody that is against them, right? And that is 100% the mindset that like most of these UConn fans have. And he gets it. He embraces it. He leans into it. And I think that that's something that college basketball needs. It's something that Dan Hurley is going to provide. And it's something where I think that if he needed to, he could shut that off, right? I think that he is smart and calculated with it. And I think that this year, as you go for a three-peat, he's probably going to dial it up even more. And I'm excited to see what that could possibly turn into. But I will say this, as far as this season is concerned, I am so glad that this process is over. Not only because for the last 5 days, having every single person that I know reach out to me and text me and ask if I know anything about what Hurley's decision is going to end up being was driving me a little bit insane. But I do think that uh, the most important thing when it comes to the success of the UConn program has been the player development, right? Has been the work that they've been able to do in practices and off the court and in the summer, right? Like there's so much that has to be done to get this group of players ready to be a team that competes for a national championship that like they don't have a day to waste. You know, you got to acclimate Aiden Mahaney and get him ready to do the stuff that Tristan Newton did last year and get him to understand what this offense is going to be and his role in it. You need to have Liam McNeely ready to be taught and developed and coached up on what it takes to be successful as a college basketball player and to develop that adjustment that he's going to have to make at this level. You got to start teaching Terrace Reed how to read the game better, right? Like he is a super productive player that has all of this talent that needs to be taught how to be more than just the guy that says, see the ball, get the ball, got the ball, score the ball, right? Like it's going to take time to be able to get him ready to compete and contribute at the level that UConn needs him to compete and contribute. I think that Solo Ball and Jalen Stewart and Jaden Ross are all guys that have some level of pro potential, whether that's in the NBA or overseas, but they have to get better. Like, look at the last 2 years for UConn, right? Their starting lineup included 5 guys that are going to end up being NBA players in each of those 2 seasons. And I don't think that there is anybody looking at this roster this year that is going to say the same thing about this group, right? You have to develop them and you have to coach them and you have to get them ready, right? This is when the development is done. This is when guys go from being, Tristan Newton went from being a guy that averaged 10, 4, and 4 to a first-team All-American. That happened in the summer. Jordan Hawkins went from a guy that averaged 5 points a game to 16 points per game with the work he got done in the summer. So the Dama Sonogo went from a black hole his first couple years as a post player to the tournament most outstanding player and winning a national championship with the work that was done in the summer, right? These 4 to 5 months from now until the start of the season is when Alex Karaban goes from being a good player on the team that's went back-to-back to being a first-team All-American and the guy that is the linchpin and the focal point for a team that's going to try to win a 3rd straight national championship this year. This is when Hassan Diarra goes from being a good 6th man off the bench, change of pace piece to the starting point guard on a top 5 team that is going to be good enough to be the starting point guard on a top 5 team. This is when Solo Ball and Jalen Stewart and Jaden Ross go from being barely in the rotation to guys that live up to the hype that they had coming in to the UConn program. Like, the summers are when the championships are won. You win the games in January and February and specifically March. But to get to the point where you're good enough to win those games is the work that is done in the summer. And I couldn't be more thrilled that we have our maniac coach back to get these guys ready to play. Stairway to 7 starts